What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Super Fantasy Bros podcast here on the Triple Play Fantasy Network. Now, obviously, I am not Kevin Coleman. I got an upgrade. I'm better looking. I shaved, and I have no kids all of a sudden, so I'm a free man. Life is pretty good around here.
Power up.
Yeah, right, exactly. And of course, the other voice you hear is the normal second half of the show, Mr. Jacob Dunn. Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, my man. I got my Christmas sweater, feeling super Christmassy right now, watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I'm feeling good right now, David.
Oh man, that sounds like a absolute pleasant night. I love it. I'm very jealous of you right now.
Let's go.
But Jacob, we got a pretty packed show here, and we're gonna be breaking down the recent news and everything going on from week 13 of the season as we look ahead to week 14. But before we do that, we don't want you to forget who, of course, we are in association with, and that is, of course, the Fantasy Points Media Group. Now, a little birdie told me.
Here we go.
So Jacob and I, obviously, we're going to be doing the show a little different. Jacob's going to play the awesome soundboard, and I'm going to try to not sound too stupid here. Just remember with Fantasy Points that if you use code 211010, that you get 10% off using that code, and you get 50% off the rest of the season. So my math is not great, but I believe that's 60%, which is a pretty good deal. So make sure you check that out. Now, as Mr. Mario said, yeah, there we go.
Let's go.
Take two is perfect. Right. All right, so we're looking now, starting out with our reactions from week 13, players who stood out and players who disappointed. Jacob, I think we got to start right off the top with somebody that plays for your Denver Broncos that was the talk of the fantasy community all week.
Oh, he sure was, guys. And everyone knows who we are talking about right now, and that is Javonte Williams. Have yourself a day, my man. 29.8 fantasy points in PPR. He finished as the RB1. All right. He had so much hype this week, and he lived up to it and then some. You know, he did have that garbage touchdown, but that's what fantasy is about most of the time. All about those garbage points at the end of the game. So I was stoked, man. He rushed 23 times for 102 yards. Also had 6 catches for 76 yards and a score. I mean, we got a little taste of what he can do once he takes over this backfield next year. And I am here for it, my man.
So you want to hear something crazy, Jacob? He was the first rookie to have over 100 rushing yards and 75 receiving yards in a game since Saquon Barkley did it in his rookie season.
Whoa, that's a stat.
Yeah, wow. He really set the world on fire in his first start. And I'm going to take a little ad lib here, Jacob.
Let's do it.
Melvin Gordon does not come back to this team. Is Javonte Williams a top 10 pick in redraft leagues next year?
100%. You saw what he can do without a viable quarterback. I don't call Teddy a viable quarterback. I call him just a game manager. Javonte is quarterback proof. I mean, I know it's very easy to say that after what he just did, and he doesn't have a huge sample size, but I mean, in limited touches, he's been dominating. And then he gets his shot at RB1 touches, and he's the RB1 this week. I mean, you can't not take him with your top 10 pick. I mean, I honestly think he's in the conversation for at least top 6.
Top 6, yeah. I put the question out on Twitter, and I was for a top 15 pick next year, and it was a 90% yes.
Okay.
And I had people in my comments that were saying looking in the 5 to 7 range. So
there you go.
Very much in on Javonte Williams next year. But also now on the runner-up here is another running back, a couple running backs actually that caught your eye.
Yes, so I was looking at David Montgomery with 28.1 fantasy points and Sony Michelle with 21.9 fantasy points. So Sony Michelle, I have a little bit of a story for you. On the morning of week 13, I stole Sony Michelle off the waiver wire from the dude I was facing who had Darrell Henderson Jr. He did not put in a waiver claim on him. And Sony Michelle was just sitting there. And I was sitting there with the choice between Sony Michelle and a Jamal Williams. And I was like, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to go with Sony Michelle. Because even if Darrell plays, Sony's going to get the bulk of carries with a crazy great matchup against Jacksonville. And my opponent got a goose egg from Daryl, and I got 22 points from Sony. So I was pumped. So, hey, Javonte and, had an amazing game. David Montgomery, after a few weeks of just being average, finally had that blow-up game. He finished inside the top 10, which he should do from here on out. And then Sony Michelle. I mean, all those backs have a day.
Yeah, I mean, Sony Michelle really looked like he took the job and pardon the pun, but ran with it. I've even been hearing some people saying that when Darrell Henderson is healthy, that they think Sony Michelle might be even a better fit for this offense with the way that he runs compared to Darrell Henderson. So if you picked up Sony Michelle, it might not just be a 1 week fill, and this could be something down the stretch that potentially could be a league winner.
Oh, I love that. I love that phrase, league winner, David. Oh, man. I love it. Thank you.
It's thrown around a lot, but it's true. I mean, if you have the starting running back in this Rams offense, that's a big deal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am here for it, my man. Let's attack these playoffs.
For sure. And best way to do it is by listening to the Super Fantasy Bros podcast. We'll get you right. We'll get you right here.
Let's do it.
But Jacob, we got to get some negative here. We don't like to do it, but we have to do it for the fantasy player. And who are some Debbie Downers for you this week?
Oh, man, I got to go with not so scary Terry McLaurin. My gosh, he finished with 5.3 fantasy points. He finished as a wide receiver 56. He just has not been great over the past 2 weeks. And even since, he blew up in week 4, he's just been average. Like he is just not the same scary Terry we saw in the first 4 weeks. Now, whether that just be Taylor Heineke just taking a step down, Scary Terry's just has not been a wide receiver 1. He has been a middling wide receiver 2 to a borderline wide receiver 3. And this was just hitting rock bottom. Like in a great matchup versus Vegas, he just didn't do much. I mean, 5.3 fantasy points in a PPR. And then I have some runners up here. It's pretty broad, but every single player on the Patriots and Bills not named Damian Harris. That was just a gross looking game. And it was just I had no idea that it was going to snow that hard. I should have looked more into the weather because I had Tyler Bass in one of my leagues. Now he still got me like 4 points, but and I still won, but it's like, I would have never played Tyler Bass. I wouldn't have played most players in that game if I had known that weather. So that was my bad. That's like a cautionary tale for us moving forward, or for me moving forward, at least, that I need to check the weather, even like the Monday night games and the Sunday night games, like just to make sure that I can pivot to my players who play on Sunday morning who have better weather. Cause that was just gross, David.
Who could have predicted that Mac Jones would have only had 3 passes? It's unreal, right?
Yeah. Unreal, dude. I saw like a bunch of GIFs being like, Bill Belichick is going to put this stat picture of going 3 for something, like winning a game with only 3 completions. That's going inside the Bill Belichick Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I believe, I don't have the exact stat, but I believe it was in the early 1970s was the last time that someone threw, I think it was 2 passes, and then it's the shortest amount of passes thrown since then. And Jacob, I won't go long on this, but I had a matchup where I was up by 2 points and they had Kendrick Bourne. And I thought there was no chance I was going to pull it out. And I was like, 1 carry for 2 yards. Take it in the bank. Held on to the number.
I love that, dude. That is such a nice surprise when, like, you have no shot, and then all of a sudden you look at the end of the game, because you just don't want to look at your scores, and you look and you get that W. Is there a better feeling?
I will tell you, I'll add to that feeling, Jacob. It's when you are the top 2 scorers of the 12 teams in your league, and you're like, of course I played the other highest scorer, and you think you're going to lose as the number 2, but you hold on to be the top scorer. It was absolutely fantastic.
Dude, I love that, man. Power up, David.
Yeah, I'm feeling super strong right now, and we're going to need to be strong as we get to our next segment here, which is the waiver wire ads and watch for this week.
Yeah, so So number 1 on my list here is Dontrell Hilliard. All right, since taking on a larger role since Derrick Henry's injury, Hilliard is averaging 14 touches for 175 or 107.5 total yards with a rushing touchdown over his last 2 games. He is the preferred passing pass catching back in Tennessee and should get plenty of carries moving forward. Now, there is a slight risk with Jeremy Mcnichols possibly coming back this week, but I don't see the Titans veering away from what's been working with Hilliard and Foreman. So Hilliard, to me, is a low-end RB2 to high-end RB3 who needs to be scooped up in all leagues.
Now, is this format dependent? Like, did you prefer Foreman and non-PPR?
Now, Foreman, I'm a fan in non-PPR. Yeah, I think I would go with Foreman because Hilliard does make his money with catches. Even though before the bye week, Hilliard did well on the ground. He had 12 rushes for about, 70 to 80 yards. But, he did have that huge run to help him. So Hilliard's money is in the passing game. And in a non-PPR league, yeah, I would lean towards Foreman. How about you?
I think I'm the same. In a non-PPR, I'm going to definitely go Foreman. PPR, Hilliard. Hilliard had that nice run. You don't know if that type of game-breaking stuff is going to be every single week. And right now for this week, I do know that the Jacksonville Jaguars, in terms of fantasy points against for running backs, they're right in the middle of the pack, around 24 a game, and they've only given up one receiving touchdown. So it could be a problem as far as through the air. They're also towards the middle of the pack as far as yards allowed through the air, but they've given up 12 touchdowns on the ground, which is towards the upper third of the league in that category. So it could be very interesting too with Julio Jones also coming back. Yeah. Are the Titans just going to, kind of ground and pound them? Or are they going to try to go back to the air to get Tannehill's confidence back? But you would expect the Titans to win this game. And one of those running backs you would think would have a part of that. Probably both, I think, is a stretch. So if you have both of them on your roster, I don't think you should feel comfortable playing both. But I think kind of like we're saying, depending on the format, that's who you should go with.
Yeah, I also think that Hilliard does have that upside over Foreman. So I would start Hilliard in a vacuum, especially if you're fighting for that playoff spot. There's no running backs on your waiver wire. I would definitely spend up some fab because you might, if you save up your fab now and you miss the playoffs, what's the point? So might as well grab that running back who's going to get those guaranteed touches, at least 10 plus touches. So I would add Hilliard if you are running back needy.
And Jacob, the next guy that you have on your list is somebody that always makes fantasy players tear their hair out when they try to start him. But this is the week you think you're going to benefit having him in your lineup.
I think it's the week, man. And we're talking about Marquez, Valdes, Scantling. All right, MVS has been heating up over his last two games, averaging 9.5 targets for 4 catches and 86.5 yards. He also has a receiving touchdown during that span. Valdes Scantling is the only true deep threat on Green Bay, and he's facing a Chicago defense allowing the 11th most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. I think that MVS should be scooped up, given his recent spike in involvement in the offense, and he should be started in most leagues given his friendly matchup at home coming off the bye week. For me, David, I have Rashad Bateman because I have just been riddled with injuries. Bateman has been my wide receiver too for the last 2 weeks in my big money league. He's been disappointing. I've been winning despite of him, but I can't keep carrying that luck. Like, I want to turn to MVS. Now, yes, MVS does have that propensity to put up a goose egg or just like 2 catches for, like 20 something yards, but he is the only true deep threat. And Aaron Rodgers loves to look his way deep. He wants to get MVS involved early. I think that Rodgers takes a few shots deep to MVS early just to take it to the Chicago Bears because, that is a rivalry, the Packers and the Bears in division, and Green Bay is at home. So I like MVS as an add and a start if you need a wide receiver 2, like a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3.
And Chicago's given up the 5th most amount of passing touchdowns this season, 14, which is, again, tied for the 5th most in the NFL. So receivers are definitely getting in the end zone against the Chicago Bears. Yeah. And, why not? Aaron Rodgers is going to torch the Chicago Bears secondary. That's right. And, if it's Davante Adams is not going to do the job, or maybe he gets, 1 or 2 touchdowns, I feel like MVS is the next best call there. So I definitely like that. I will throw in another name here, Jacob, and it's somebody that I'm actually right now in a couple leagues, I'm teetering on, verging on making the playoffs or not making the playoffs. And I've had some injuries. Robert Woods has gone down. Jerry Jeudy right now with Teddy Bridgewater not playing great at quarterback, as you know, as a Broncos fan, is really hurting me. And I'm taking a stab on this guy, and that's KJ Osborne. KJ Osborne is, I think, somebody that you should pick up this week and is going to be very beneficial for you to have. Last week, he filled in, obviously, as you know, that Adam Thielen went down with a high ankle sprain. The chances he plays this week are pretty much slim to none. They haven't officially declared him out yet, but with a Thursday night game, that is pretty much, again, thrown out the window. Looking at last week, you can look at the total amount of snaps played by Minnesota players. And he actually ran the second most amount of routes among wide receivers. Actually, no, I'm sorry. He ran the most amount of, he had the highest amount of snaps of any wide receiver last week. He actually ran more than just one more route than Justin Jefferson, or was on the field for one more snap than Justin Jefferson. As far as passing routes were concerned, the routes ran between the two. Justin Jefferson ran 46 routes and KJ Osborne ran 44 routes. So he's basically stepping in as the number 2 that Adam Thielen was. It's not being split up. Tyler Conklin is definitely still involved here, and he's a great tight end streamer as well. But KJ Osborne being on the field as much as he was, along with the fact that they're going against the Detroit Lions. And last week, as far as targets were concerned as well, KJ Osborne had 7 targets and 4 catches for 57% reception percentage, 47 yards and a touchdown last week. Going against the New Orleans Saints this week, or I'm sorry, not the New Orleans Saints, going against, I believe, who they play on Thursday night. It is the...
they played the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The Pittsburgh Steelers, who actually have given up the 10th most amount of fantasy points to wide receivers this year, over 36 per game. Also, again, tied for 5th with 14 touchdowns allowed. You know Justin Jefferson's going to get his. He's also going to get the focus of the defense.
Right.
But KJ Osborne, get in that number 2 role where Thielen is. I think he could get in the end zone this week, and somebody that's worth using some fab on if you need somebody to fill in a pinch, whether it's, a high-end flex play. I think he can even be a low-end wide receiver too, depending how thin you are at the wide receiver position.
I love that pick. And you're actually convincing me to put him ahead of MVS and, like in terms of like the pecking order, just because MVS, he does have that boomer bust, whereas KJ Osborne against the Steelers should have a very safe floor. So it depends. Like, do you need that deep shot, like with MVS, or do you need that safe floor with KJ Osborne? Because what I like about KJ Osborne is that he's not just some guy who is stepping into Adam Thielen's role. KJ Osborne, like you said, David, has had a huge role all season and even was on the field more than Justin Jefferson. So the Vikings love Osborne. Kirk Cousins, you have seen the special connection with KJ Osborne. And now that KJ Osborne is going to siphon Adam Thielen's targets, I mean, I think he's as safe as a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside as there is. And he is available in 93% of sleeper leagues, and I'm sure a ton of Yahoo leagues. I haven't checked, but I only saw on sleeper he was only 7% rostered. So KJ Osborne, if you are in need of a wide receiver, I would probably look his way first.
Yeah, he was the wide receiver 21 in week 13. And again, in terms of what you look for in fantasy, it's opportunity outweighs the talent. Obviously, if you combine the both, like we're seeing with Jonathan Taylor right now, then you have the perfect recipe for a fantasy superstar. But you can also have players, again, that may not be as skilled, but they're getting the opportunity because of an injury. And right now, KJ Osborne is that. He's third wide receiver on this depth chart and was 4th in targets behind both those wide receivers and Tyler Conklin. But now him stepping into getting somewhat, Adam Thielen's targets are going to be split between him and Conklin. But again, you would expect him to have a decent floor. Maybe he's not going to win you your week, but he's someone who can fill in and give you that stability that you're looking for as you go to the fantasy playoffs. But like Jacob said, if you're looking for more hey, I need like a 20-plus point game because that's what I need at this point, then MVS is probably the better player to look at because that's what he's known for. So I think that's something that's very interesting to look at. Again, just assess where you're at and make that call where you need to. But let's get to our sneaky starts and sits. And Jacob, you got some our timing's going to get better, folks.
A little off, yeah.
But you got your sneaky starts and sits, and you got somebody right up top here, which people are going to be very shocked to see that you have as a sit this week.
Yes. So guys, as my sneaky sit this week at quarterback, it's going to be Tom Brady versus Buffalo.
Is that a new one?
That's a new one.
I like it. I like it.
Thank you, sir. I thought you would. So before blowing up last week against a sorry Atlanta Falcons defense, Brady was having a little bit of a rough stretch where he was only averaging 15.8 fantasy points per game. Now, I know that's not awful, and like we have just been, we have been enjoying like a renaissance year from Tom Brady. He has been a top 5 quarterback all year, but he's had a rough stretch. All right. He has showed signs of slowing down. Now that Gronk's back, it helps him a little bit. But Buffalo, like that Buffalo defense is allowing the least amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. That's scary. And I know he's at home, but I'd rather start both of my quarterback streamer picks that I'll reveal a little bit later than to start Tom Brady.
Yeah, it's a very difficult play. Obviously, again, Buffalo just gives up over 11 points a game to quarterbacks this year. And like you said, Jacob, that's the worst in the league. If I don't know if you have if you've ranked him yet this week, Jacob, but do you have him still in QB1 territory, or is he ranked outside the top 12 for you?
No, I still have him as a low-end quarterback 1. I haven't finalized my rankings, but he'll be somewhere around 10 to 12. Whereas my 2 quarterback streamer picks, who are widely available, will be inside the top 10. So, Brady will still get his. I mean, a bad game from him is 13 to 16 points, which is, better than most. But if you have other options, which you probably do in 1 quarterback leagues, I would veer towards another quarterback with upside.
Yeah, and Jacob, that's a professional tease right there, because you have the people just yearning for your quarterback streamers, but you got to wait. You got to wait, because there's a couple other things we got to get to here first.
You have to keep listening, guys.
Exactly. So we're going to go now to some running backs, and a particular running back that you like against those Atlanta Falcons. You mentioned Tom Brady destroyed. Yep. Who do you like this week?
Yes. So fire up your Panthers and fire up running back Chuba Hubbard. Well, that was the wrong one. I meant to do this one right here. Power up, Chuba Hubbard. I hope that's not like a foreseeing, like, oh crap, Chuba's gonna have a bad game, because he's not. All right, he's facing an Atlanta Falcons defense giving up the 7th most fantasy points to running backs this season. All right, and he's coming off a bye week, so he has fresh legs. All right, so Chuba has this backfield all to himself with CMC out for the year. All right, to me, Hubbard is a locked-in RB1 this week due to volume and a very friendly matchup.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And they also have Amir Abdullah there too, who is, right now averaging about 4 catches a game there. So he's somebody in a PPR league. If you need a dart throw, not bad. Again, like you mentioned. Now my question to you, Jacob, is Atlanta also is not very good against quarterbacks. If I'm not mistaken, Atlanta is actually, they give up the 2nd most points to fantasy quarterbacks behind Washington this year, over 21 a game, 25 passing touchdowns, which trails only Indianapolis and Washington in that category. Is Cam Newton a good start? I know this is running backs, but he's also kind of a running back too. Is he somebody that you'd be looking at?
You are giving up my secrets for one of my streamers.
Oh, I didn't see he was in your streamers. Wait, hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Hold that thought, guys.
Hold that thought. We're gonna get back to that. I just ruined Jacob's tease, so we're gonna stay just with the running backs. We're gonna go to wide receivers.
I agree with you, David, but we're not there yet.
I jumped the gun, folks. I'm sorry. I was so excited for his streamers. That is my bad.
I love it.
But there's a wide receiver that's just as exciting. Somebody that is just been great for PPR that you're starting against my Kansas City Chiefs this week.
That's right, my man, and that is Hunter Renfro. All right, I didn't botch that sound this time. Like you said, David, he is facing your Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. All right, Hunter Renfro, since week 9, he is the wide receiver 8 in PPR leagues. That's a very solid 5-game sample size. Renfro is the de facto wide receiver 2 in Vegas behind Darren Waller. All right, so that means he's the wide receiver 1, but he is definitely the 2nd option in that receiving core. All right, and Renfro has a fantastic matchup traveling to Kansas City, where he should get force-fed the ball in a potential negative game script. So I'm firing up Renfro as a wide receiver 2 in both half PPR leagues and PPR leagues. In standard leagues, if you're still playing standard leagues, he's more of like a borderline wide receiver 2-3 option. But us over here with half PPR and PPR leagues, he is a solid wide receiver 2.
I mean, Jacob, I'm looking at this season, his targets. These are his targets: 9, 7, 6, 8, 8, 5, 8, 9, 9, 4, 9, 10. So he's had 92 targets over the 12 weeks that he's played this year. Now, math was not my subject in school, so I will calculate that real quick. But I believe 92 targets divided by 12 games, that gives you,
that's
he's getting nearly 8 targets a game right now. And that's with that outlier of he has a 3 and 4 or a 5 and 4 target game. But most of the time he's getting at least 6 targets, especially now. Last week you saw without Darren Waller, he got 10 targets.
Oh, man.
So his floor is pretty good.
Right.
I mean, again, also just looking at the PPR formats too, of course, is he's basically given you double-digit PPR points in 5 of his last 6 games. So he's been very, very consistent. And actually, while we're on the subject of that, he's only had single-digit PPR points in 2 of his 12 games this year.
That's incredible.
That's quite a floor. Quite a floor.
Consistency, my man. That's what you want. That's what you need right now if you're fighting for a playoff spot or want to hold on to that 6th seed, that 5th seed. Yeah, start Renfro this week with confidence.
Yeah, Joe, I think you inspired me to. I usually in my start sit column try not to put the obvious, but he's somebody that might need to be just refreshing of, hey, like he's somebody that you got to fire, especially without Waller in there. If Waller doesn't play this week, he's probably guaranteed for 10 targets.
Yes. Darren Waller is day to day with his knee injury. So, he could play, he could not play. You don't know. But even if Waller does play, I mean, I still see him getting 7 targets. But like you said, David, if Waller doesn't play, then 10 targets are pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah. And I'm telling, while we're on the subject of targets and guarantees, we've got somebody in the tight end position here that's filling in for someone who is a great tight end. And I don't know if he'll be back this season, but this guy's coming and stepping into a great role this week.
Yes. We're going with Ricky Seals-Jones versus Dallas, guys. You need to start him this week. It is unfortunate what happened to Logan Thomas, but, Ricky Seals-Jones has shown great chemistry with Taylor Heinicke, and Taylor Heinicke needs him this week against a Dallas Cowboys defense that he is just going to have to keep up with this week because Dak's going to score. All right, so with Logan Thomas out the rest of the year, Seals-Jones is the tight end 1 in Washington. Now, Seals-Jones didn't play last week due to a hip issue, but he practiced all last week and was a late scratch. So there is some optimism that he will play this week, but keep your eye on it. If he does play, I expect him to soak up 5 to 8 targets facing a Dallas Cowboys defense, allowing the 11th most fantasy points to tight ends this season. So if you're desperate for a tight end, Ricky Seals-Jones could be a very cheap plug-and-play option for you this week.
Yeah, and I like it just for the fact of that if you looked at actually Washington has the best schedule rest of season for tight ends as far as the bounce of points per game opponents allow. And yeah, so it's a very fantastic thing. So if you have Ricky Seals-Jones, he could be someone down the stretch that could be really great for you. He does have, I believe, 1, 2, 3 finishes in the top 12 amongst tight ends this year, and that's in limited playing time.
Right.
So he gets, 60-70% of the tight end snaps, and that's going to be somebody that could probably finish as a top 10 tight end a lot of the weeks rest of the season. So not somebody that's a bad pickup for rest of season if Logan Thomas is not returned.
Especially since he's only rostered in 5% of Yahoo and sleeper leagues. And if you see him on the waiver wire open and you need that tight end, then just scream and pick him up and start him.
Couldn't have said it any better than Mario right there.
Right. Mario knows best.
But Jacob, part of the fantasy playoffs and getting ready for the fantasy playoffs is playing defense, whether it's picking up somebody so your opponent can't get him or just picking up a great defense to stream. And you have a great one this week.
Oh, yeah. I'm going with the Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears. All right. Green Bay has been a top 10 fantasy defense all season from weeks 1 to 12. All right. They had a bye week last week, but they're still in the top 12 overall, even with that bye week. And most recently scored 13 fantasy points against the Los Angeles Rams. All right. And this week, the Packers welcome a Chicago Bears offense, allowing the 6th most fantasy points to defenses. All right, so whether it's Andy Dalton starting or Justin Fields starting, I see the Packers having a very safe floor and keeping the Bears score to a minimum this week. All right, so Green Bay defense is as safe as they come this week at the defense position, especially at home.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm actually looking really quickly because I'm not mistaken, the Bears have actually been really good for opposing defenses. As my computer loads here, the Bears have given up 3 or more sacks
Okay.
in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the last 7 weeks. They've given up
Okay.
3 or more sacks.
Okay.
So that's a pretty good stat to know. The fact that
Yeah.
if 6 out of the last 7 weeks, the Bears are giving up 3 or more sacks, obviously that's a better chance of fumbles and turnovers, scoop and score touchdowns.
Yep.
So Andy Dalton expected to be back there, not nearly as mobile as Justin Fields, and
Right.
Dalton can throw a pick or two as well. So I think that's a really great pick.
Very safe floor, and with that upside. I mean, you want that, right? You want that safe floor, and you want that upside, and the Packers present all that for you this week.
Yeah, so it's a great play, and I think it's Packers D. Cardinals D just had 4 interceptions last week. If that doesn't also sway you
Okay.
to potentially wanting to start the Bears or against the
Absolutely.
Bears DST there with Packers.
Right.
All right, Jacob. Let's now get to what the people have been waiting for. We've teased it enough. Those quarterback streamers.
All right. Quarterback streamers for week 14. All right. I'm going to start it off with Taysom Hill at the New York Jets. All right. Hill is rostered in only 34% of Yahoo and 42% of Sleeper. Last week, it wasn't pretty, but Hill delivered quarterback 1 numbers, finishing as the quarterback 4 with 24.7 fantasy points. I'm going back to the well this week and choosing Hill as my favorite streamer for the 2nd week in a row. All right, he's going up against a New York Jets defense allowing the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Now, there is a slight risk with starting Taysom due to a mallet finger injury, but you're not streaming him for his throwing ability. All right, he makes his fantasy money through his legs, and I predict another 100-plus yard game this week on the ground and a quarterback 1 finish. All right.
Now, Jacob, I like that call. The Jets have given up 2 or more passing touchdowns to quarterbacks in 8 straight games. So 8 straight games, a quarterback's thrown at least 2 passing touchdowns on them, and all but one of them have had at least 100 quarterback rating. So you're obviously, Taysom Hill is going to do stuff with his legs, but that type of floor as far as just passing, if he's doing that while passing the ball with that rushing ability, I mean, that's quite a combination. I think he's a great play. Is he in your top 10 this week?
He's in my
Will he
top
be?
5 this week.
Ooh, there we go.
He's
I
in my
like
top
it.
5 this week. So fire up Hill, guys. And for my second quarterback streaming option, we got Cam Newton versus the Atlanta Falcons. All right. Cam Newton is only rostered in 29% of Yahoo and 40% of Sleeper. Scam Newton was on full display in week 12 when he threw 2 picks and only passed for 92 yards against the Dolphins. Usually after a stat line like that, you're going to stay away the next game, far away. But Cam is coming off a bye week to face an Atlanta Falcons defense, allowing the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. So don't be surprised if he rushes for 60 to 70 yards with a couple of tutties through the air and the ground. Cam is a locked-in quarterback 1 this week for me.
Yeah, the Falcons have actually given up 3 games with 4 or more passing touchdowns to quarterbacks. 3 of their 13 games. So they're giving up a lot of touchdowns to quarterbacks. And like you said, they're also giving up over 23 yards per game on the ground. And it's just a smash matchup for Cam. If he can't win this matchup or can't do anything against this matchup, then you have to be worried about rest of season if you're trusting him down the stretch.
Exactly. But I just think he is just a stone cold. He has that safe floor with his rushing. This isn't a Dolphins defense who is at least respectable, who had Cam's number last week. I mean, this Falcons defense is atrocious. So fire up all your Panthers. I mean, I have a question for you, David. If you were desperate, you needed a wide receiver 3, wide receiver, or the waiver wire is barren, but you see Robbie Anderson there. Are you taking a shot on him as your wide receiver 3 with this matchup, or are you
Oh
still
man,
passing?
God.
Smash or pass, David?
Now you're speaking my language here.
There we go.
Um, I want to look up a stat real quick, but without looking at the stat, I just want to see like the explosive pass plays that the Falcons allow, just because that's pretty much where Robbie Anderson lives, is the boomer bust. But without looking at that, I'm definitely passing just for how much he's
Okay.
burned me. And it seems like DJ Moore was definitely the preferred
Yeah.
target from Cam. And obviously they're trying to run the ball more. They just fired offensive coordinator Joe Brady, apparently because they want to run the ball more. And that was the big reason why. So I think they'll establish the run more in this game, which will mean less passes. And that I would just DJ Moore is the only pass catcher I would feel comfortable starting at this point in the season, personally.
And that's completely fair. Yeah, man.
Would you?
I wouldn't start Robbie as well. I mean, it's tempting just because it's like, oh man, this Falcons defense is awful. But I think you're right. All who we can really trust is Chuba, DJ Moore, Cam Newton, and maybe Amir Abdullah as like a Hail Mary, maybe like a cheap DFS option, like you said, right?
Yeah. That Carolina offense is definitely gonna be something. First week again with a new offensive coordinator as well. So we might see a totally different offense this week.
Absolutely.
Jacob, we're into the last part of the show, and that's the locks of the week.
All right, locks of the week, guys. If Melvin Gordon sits, Javonte Williams is my lock starter against a Detroit Lions defense giving up the third most fantasy points to running backs this season. All right, but if Gordon returns, Javonte Williams goes back to being an RB2, and I will pivot to a guy that you mentioned earlier, David, and that's DJ Moore. All right. DJ Moore would be my lock of the week, facing an Atlanta defense giving up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. And you made a fantastic point, David. Cam Newton locks on to DJ Moore. Like Newton knows that, where his bread is buttered. And that's with DJ Moore, not with Robbie Anderson, not with anyone else. It's just the DJ Moore and Cam show, at least with targets. So DJ Moore is as safe as they come this week. He is locked in as my wide receiver too. But if Melvin Gordon sits, I can't wait to see the Javonte show again. Man, I'm going to get my popcorn ready and just enjoy that, my man.
Yeah, if Javonte starts and there's no Melvin Gordon, that has to be my lock as well. He was somebody, actually, I was prepared to go on record to say a bold prediction. If he starts the rest of the year, that he would be a top 3 running back the rest of the way, behind potentially just like Jonathan Taylor and then some running back, maybe like an Austin Eckler or something like that.
Sure. And that is definitely possible because the Broncos are feeding the RBs, and they have showed that they're going to feed whoever is in the backfield. Now, if it's split, then it's split. It's split 10-10 or 12-12. If not, then, Javonte got 9 targets as well. All right. He only caught 6 of them, but he got 9 targets. So, I mean, they force fed him. So if he starts again against the Lions, forget about it. Let's go.
Jacob, this is a safe space, and Kevin's not here.
Uh-oh.
So obviously this is free balling. Maybe there's a better lock of the week, but just quickly skimming.
Okay.
My lock of the week for double-digit PPR points and a guaranteed RB2 finish. Guaranteed. RB2 finish.
RB2.
I can't take back a guarantee, so he'll be at least a top 24 running back this week. That is Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, a guy that has burned me quite a lot this season. Okay. Injuries have been obviously a big part of that, and Chiefs refusing to use him in the passing game, but they talked about going into their bye, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire needed to be featured in the passing game. Now they're going against the the Las Vegas Raiders, who are right now 3rd worst against running backs. They've given up over 27 fantasy points per game, and they've been a lot worse even just more recently too. They were decent in the beginning parts of the season, giving up over 4 yards per carry to running backs. And if you've seen recently, Antonio Gibson, Joe Mixon, a bunch of these guys have literally just tore them apart. Combine the fact that Patrick Mahomes' passer rating at home is 30 points lower. He's thrown, I believe, twice as many interceptions at home as he has on the road. Just not nearly the same player at home. I know he just torched the Raiders the last time he played for, I believe, 5 touchdowns, I think it was. But I think this is going to be one of those games that the Chiefs use Clyde Edwards-Hilaire a lot. I think he gets 20-plus touches in this game. I think he gives you anywhere from maybe 15 to 17 carries and gives you 3 or 4 catches. And I think you saw he got a nice little screen pass in the Chiefs win against the Broncos. I think they're going to do a lot more of that. I think Clyde Edwards-Hilaire is a sneaky play here and somebody that if you have, he's either your RB2 or your flex most likely. And I think he's going to give you right in that range. He's going to give you exactly what you want.
Clyde looked good last week, and he had 17 touches. All right, I watched that game at Denver Broncos Stadium. Now, of course, the game was in Kansas City, but I was inside a suite. There was free food. It was cool. But Clyde looked good. All right, and I love that dump off that he had for 29 yards. You know, like that was nice, and it gives me hope that he can finish as an RB2 this week, and even like a middling, like a mid-range RB2 with possible RB1 upside, especially with that matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. So I like that call a lot.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things that going against Las Vegas, you fall in love with the opponent. You also look again that the Chiefs at home just have not been putting up the same amount of points or getting the same type of thing from Patrick Mahomes as he has been on the road. They are home in this game. And then one of the biggest things, obviously, is snap counts overall and how many people are on the field. And looking at snap counts, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire played 29 snaps. Darrell Williams played 26. So the snap counts aren't necessarily too different there. But if you look as far as pass, you have Darrell Williams playing 19, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire playing 14. But when you look at run, it's 14-5 as far as snaps going to Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. So he's getting about a 66-ish% of the running back share. The fact that he was on the field for 14 pass plays and only 5 behind Darrell Williams means he's a lot more involved in the passing game than he was before. So I like those types of trends, and hopefully the Chiefs use him in that way so I won't look as stupid by the end of the season for my my top 12 call on him this year. But
I liked him too, man. It's criminal that they're not using him more. But hey, there are 4 games left in the season? Plenty of time to right the ship, Andy Reid.
Oh man, can you imagine if he was the like a league winner for people, if he just put up like 20 plus points every game down the stretch? I would troll Kevin for the end of
the
time.
Look on Kevin's face. I was just gonna say.
I will troll him until the end of time that happens. And the fact that I got to talk this much about Clyde Edwards-Hilaire is only fitting with Kevin not on the show because he wouldn't have let me done that. So on that note, we'll close out the show here. Appreciate you guys tuning in to the Super Fantasy Bros and everything that's going on the Triple Play Fantasy Network. Of course, check out the YouTube channel. Kevin just did a great Devy mock draft that's already approaching 400 views. It's just absolutely fantastic stuff. Check that out. Jacob and I do our start sit shows. We're off a little bit of a hiatus for the next 2 weeks, but we'll be back for the fantasy playoffs to help you and your start sit decisions there. And if you appreciate and you like this podcast, make sure you go to Apple and give us a little 5-star rating and review. And if you watch on YouTube, give us a like and comment anything down below to boost that YouTube algorithm to get this podcast out to more and more people. Jacob, anything else before the people get out of here?
Just wanted to send some good vibes to everyone's way. If you are fighting for that last playoff spot or you're trying to hold that bye week seed, I am sending some good vibes. And I also want to say, David, thank you so much for being an incredible host. I appreciate it, my man. Kevin definitely appreciates it. And yeah, man, this was a very, very fun show.
Appreciate you guys allowing me to step in and have the Kevin name under my name here, or under myself here. Yeah, so it's quite to live up to the boys here, but appreciate you guys letting me come on. And for everybody that listens, again, appreciate you. Next week, Kevin should be back, and you'll hear him, of course, his normal self here next week. So again, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Catch you guys.